You are listening to men who have no authority. How can a man say that you are of low value after 35? How can a man say that you do not have the level of traction of a high-powered man when that man has got to get a GoFundMe for his funeral?
Yo, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Coffee Pod. My name is Shisha Zed.
Drink the coffee, it'll make you feel better.
Guys, the amount of people who all of a sudden have mustered up the courage to talk about Kevin, who when he was alive would not dare either go on his platform, right? We remember those smoke shows. They didn't want that. They didn't want that smoke, man. We remember those smoke shows. He would accept anybody who had something to say, but they didn't want it. Why didn't they want to talk to Kevin Samuels one-on-one? Well, because deep down inside, people like Boyce Watkins, who I'm going to actually make a whole separate video about. Guys, hit the like button, right? We need to get these videos out there. Because I'm tired of seeing people lying on KS. And when I can, I'm going to address some of these people. Today, I'm going to be addressing Jamal Bryant, who's a pastor who dissed Kevin Samuels during one of his sermons. Guys, I don't talk about spiritual things often on my channel, but best believe I'm well versed in spirituality, specifically Christianity. Even though I don't talk about it, once in a while, I'm forced to address certain situations just like this. So in all honesty, I don't know who this pastor is at all. Never heard of him until now, right? He might be just chasing for clout, trying to pander to women, using that Derek Jackson gospel to win the women over. Regardless, he had some stuff to say about KS following his passing. And just to give you guys some perspective, what he said got so much attention that it was posted on the Spiritual Word and on the Shade Room. No more wasting time. Let's get into it.
You are listening to men who have no authority. How can a man say that you are of low value after 35? How can a man say that you do not have the level of traction of a high-powered man when that man has got to get a GoFundMe for his funeral? Y'all ain't saying nothing to me. You got to be in that place where you operate in the authority of God. Look at another sister around and tell them, it's not that I hate men. Come on, look at another sister and say, I do not hate men. I just despise weak men. I despise cowardice men. I just ain't got time for men who are insecure about my gift. I'm not going to dummy down.
What a shame, man. What a shame. This right here is how women are getting played in the church. Just like this. This is how women are getting played and pimped in the church. The first thing he says is, how can a man with no authority? So I'm guessing he's talking about God-given authority. Tell you that you lack value. Again, spoken like a woman. Why do I say that? Well, because he's not addressing any real facts, right? Shame, insults, and guilt. He's doing what every woman does when they hear men talk about value, right? You're confusing personal value with SMV, sexual market value. There is a difference. A lot of women out here hear people talk about value and they hate it. Why? Because they've worked their whole life to be respected via their degrees or whatever else, their job titles. And yes, you might be valuable to that company. And yes, you might be valuable at that corporation that's hiring you or the business that you started, no matter what it is. But are you valuable to men? That's what Kevin Samuels talked about. And then he goes on to talk about a GoFundMe account, which is absolutely false. Now, first off, guys, I'm going to talk about some Christian concepts. And my point here is not to convert anybody. That's not what I do, right? So this isn't a debate about whether God exists or anything at all. You can look at what I talk about metaphorically, or you could take it literally. I don't care. Listen, man, hear me loud and clear. Women in the church today are no better than women outside of the church. I know this. I grew up in the church most of my life. I've studied enough scripture to know that this right here is the result of female empowerment infiltrating the church, of the gynocentric female empowerment heavily influencing the church. Look at the people who are cheering there. What did you see? Mostly women. I was watching a video by MTR recently, and he was talking about Kevin Samuels, who spoke on how the prosperity gospel is the new gospel that is preached right now in the church. Why is that so appealing to women? Well, if you think about what church is today, it's more about community. It's more about relationships, prosperity, taking, asking and taking, community. Those are very female-centered ways of approaching a belief. When community gets lifted up, relationships and community gets lifted up in church, which is what it is now, accountability gets pushed out. You don't have to be accountable for anything, right? The works gets pushed out. It's all about faith. It's all about love. It's all about community. What happens? The men leave along with it. Why? Because it stopped valuing them. And that's why there are no men left in the church. Let me explain it this way. The way God wired men is to work with a purpose in mind, right? That's what often gives men fulfillment. And if you look at the way God in the scripture explains how the Christian life should be lived, he says it should be a balance of faith and works. Right now, you see a whole lot of faith and no works, right? People are more focused on believing that they'll get, and that's that prosperity approach to the gospel, to Christianity. And every pastor falls into that. Why? Because, well, it's where the money's at, right? It's easy to tell people to believe and believe and believe. It's harder to tell them to try to change their lives. It's harder to hold people accountable. So what happens? Men leave and single women hate anything that goes against that female narrative. What it's supposed to be is it's supposed to be a balance of faith and works. I'm not saying this to try and convert anybody to Christianity. I'm just trying to point out to you the reason why men all over don't take the church seriously. You're getting gamed up by these pastors the same way that the serpent gamed you up in the garden. These pastors who are telling you don't need a man. You don't need a man. You can just follow God. You don't need a man over you, right? The same way the serpent told you, you don't need God. You can be God, right? You can be the man. I've talked about this in another video. Last but not least, I'll end this video by saying this. If you look at the scripture and look at different stories when God had a message for his people, there has never been a time where Christians as a whole have recognized God's message when he is speaking and when it's presented to them. They've always fought against it. And God uses all types of people to translate that message to his people. So when I was younger, I used to love the movie The Prince of Egypt. And in that movie, it talked about the Israelites getting set free from slavery from the Egyptians. Now, in the Bible, it talks about how the Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. They didn't have to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because it didn't take 40 years for them to reach their destination. The Israelites wandered in the wilderness not because that's what they needed to do, but because their stubbornness, their complaining. If you look at those stories, the majority of Deuteronomy is basically just Moses trying to deal with the stubborn people. And nothing has changed even today. If you look at the story of Jesus, right? The Jesus that a lot of Christians, claim to know, love, respect. When he showed up to the church, nobody recognized him. In fact, they thought he was the enemy. They didn't get the message. They couldn't recognize the Son of God when he presented himself. What am I trying to say by all this? First off, I'm not trying to say that I'm right or my view is better than yours. That's not what I'm trying to say. All I'm trying to say is when I study the scripture and I look at things a lot differently than most people when it comes to religion and scripture, all that shows me is what's popular isn't always right. And what's right isn't always popular. And what I mean by that is you're probably better off in this life if you bet against the majority of people, because the majority of people are always trying to take the easy way out. The majority of people are always coming together to avoid accountability, right? Few people recognize truth. Few people recognize a message that's going to change their life and help them in the long run. Most people get caught up in the wrong things. You're getting caught up by judging people when, in all honesty, you're not paying attention to your own life. Every generation of Christianity has always thought that they were right, that they had the right message, that they were doing it the right way. And every single one of them has been wrong. I'm confident in one thing, and this is for everything, even outside of just talking about Christianity. I always remind myself that I'm not as smart as I think I am, right? You know, this pastor talked about authority, and I think a lot of people really mess up with that, you know? What am I trying to say? There are plenty of people who've lost out on giving an ear to someone, judged somebody, and maybe at first they were interested in that gift, right? That message that was for them. But they didn't like the package that it was wrapped in. But you don't get to choose the package that your gift is wrapped in. And I'm speaking really metaphorically right now and being careful, because plenty of people lost out on an opportunity to actually hear Kevin Samuel's message. Even if you had problems with his tone and other things, his message was very straightforward. And there are people out here who actually think they're justified to keep living the same way, avoiding accountability, overvaluing themselves, all because they didn't like how it was said. But the honest truth is there are consequences for those type of things. In conclusion, I want to emphasize this. Guys, there is no difference today between women in church and outside of church. Trust me, I've dealt with them both. You need to find a woman who understands logic if you're, willing to entertain one in the first place. Does she have common sense? Let's start there. Because let me tell you this. A Christian woman who's been indoctrinated by female empowerment is more dangerous than a non-Christian woman who's open to learn and let you lead. I said it. As always, man, let me know what you thought of the content down below. I appreciate you guys for checking out this episode of The Coffee Pod. Till next time, man. I'm out. Peace.